Hello everyone. Merry belated Christmas. A happy New Year as we head into 2019. So technically, this is the last episode of 2018 for the Hockey Podcast. We'll be back next year. I had to do that. Welcome. It's been a very interesting month and a very interesting time. It is really the hotbed, one of the busier times of the hockey season, and one of the busier, underrated times actually of the sports calendar right now as well. But we're going to be talking about the Canucks. We're going to talk about the World Juniors. We're going to talk about owners calling out players. We're going to talk about fans complaining about refereeing and much more. And as with me as always is Sean. Hello, Sean from Calgary.
Hello.
Hello. Got a big game tonight between the Canucks and the Flames. We may chat a little bit about that. And from Terrace is Tyler. How are you?
Hey, guys. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year to you.
Gosh. So as of this recording, the Vancouver Canucks are 1 point out of a Stanley Cup playoff position. They are certainly doing a lot better than the so-called experts had deemed them. They're 18-4. They're one of 5 teams that I think are in the playoff hunt, along with right now the wild card teams in the Western Conference are Anaheim and Dallas. Vancouver one behind, and then Edmonton and Minnesota. And the conversation for after Christmas has been the benefits or the concerns about the Vancouver Canucks running into a playoff run, playoff battle. I don't think anyone here is necessarily convinced that they're going to make the playoffs, although 7-2-1 in the last 10. They're the hottest of the 5 teams right now in that battle. Who knows what happens? Let's pro and con this. What is the pros about the Vancouver Canucks being in a playoff battle heading into the second half of the season?
You don't turn into the Oilers?
Well,
it would
one
also be point there.
It would also be, a meaningful step forward for the development of the team.
Yeah, but that's the nicer way of putting it. You're seeing development and progress with your younger players, and it is the younger players who are driving the play for the Canucks right now, with the Pettersson and Besserline, and then Horvat with whoever he's playing with, going and driving the offense and the play for the Canucks. You don't want to become a year in, year out annual lottery team like Buffalo has been, Edmonton has been, Florida has been, and you want to be able to start building on acquiring all these skilled players.
Okay. So if they don't make it, you still see that there is a benefit to being learning how to win in a playoff battle.
Definitely. When the majority of the fan base is battling between team playoffs and team tank, for me, it's all just like I was talking about before there. It's all about development. It's all about progress. Fans should be team development. They should be wanting to see the Petterssons continue to develop, the Bo Horvats, the Brock Bessers, the Jake Virtanens. The development that we're seeing this year from all those players is something that should be recognized and celebrated by the fan base, because that's showing progress in the right direction, as opposed to running on in the spots and not going anywhere or going backwards like the Oilers have and Buffalo's has struggled up until this season, and Florida has. You need to make that next step.
Yeah, I mean, how many years in a row do you need to get to March and be playing games that aren't meaningful and you're just out there? It's just not the same thing for a player's development. And even if the Canucks end up picking, say, somewhere 15 to 20 in the draft order, I mean, obviously, if they made the playoffs, it'd be, in that 20 range. So what's the problem with that? Like, they could still add to their depth, even though they're not picking in the top 10.
The key for the Canucks this year is, even if they are in the playoff hunt, is to not lose sight of the long-term approach and plan for the club, because they've got players like Del Zotto, Edler, as well as Tanev, who could be good trade chips for the future. You're not necessarily shopping those players. Well, maybe you are with Del Zotto, but Edler and Tanev, you're not necessarily shopping them. But if the right deal comes along, and the Canucks should be looking to acquire a young right-hand shot defenseman, if one of the top right-hand shot prospects comes available to the Canucks for a Tanev or an Edler, they have to jump at that chance, because you look at where the strength of the Canucks is youth up front and youth in goal, but defensively, outside of Quinn Hughes and Olli Juolevi, there's not much to really get overly excited about.
Yeah, that's the interesting. The con part of that, because if you're Alex Edler and you're in a playoff run, are you one that's going to necessarily give up your no trade to be in a different, like, it'd have to be you'd almost have to be in a Winnipeg, Nashville, Toronto, Tampa Bay situation, a high-end Stanley Cup contender, to want to do that. If you're in a playoff run, I don't know if Edler's going to necessarily waive his no trade to just go to anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, Kevin.
Yeah, luckily though, I went earlier. I went and looked at some of the top right-handed defensemen, the prospects, and Nashville has Dante Fabro. Tampa Bay has Cal Foote. Colorado has Connor Timmins and Cale Makar. Like, those three teams are very good and legit Stanley Cup contenders. And those prospects that I listed there are top 10, top 15 defense prospects in the league, let alone being a right shot that the Canucks desperately need in their depth.
Now, here's I guess the question is when would be the better okay, let's just assume Edler waives his no trade. Let's assume there's a no trade. It's done. Edler can be traded. Is it worth it to keep Edler for the playoff battle and try to see what you can get him in for the off season, which you could see play? The pro of that would be, you've seen this guy in a playoff situation and you know what he has still, or do you think you would get more for him before the trade deadline?
Well, his contract is up in the summer, so you're getting the value will be highest at the deadline. You're not going to get much after the unless it's a sign and trade, and
right.
Edler's not going to do that. We never see that in NHL anyways. So
no, but we do see sometimes where teams trade the negotiating rights for a fourth round pick or something like that. You get something, but not very much, as you say.
Mm-hmm.
I would be very surprised if the Canucks were legitimately chasing a playoff spot at the trade deadline. I'd be surprised if they moved Edler. It would just, I think, to the rest of the team, send the wrong message. Like, if the guy is there and he's logging all these minutes and helping them get to where they want to go, and then they trade him, the effect on the rest of the team, I think, is a bit of an issue that would kind of be inconsistent with the way Jim Benning's managed the team so far.
I agree. It's a bit of a pipe dream to hope for that. The Canucks would have to fall off and not be in a realistic playoff chance at that point for them to consider trading Edler. He does play too big of a role right now on the blue line, as well as the uncertainty of Olli Juolevi with his injury now. I wouldn't be surprised if they re-sign Edler going forwards to a 1 or 2 year deal and go into next season with Hughes and Edler and Hutton anchoring that left side.
I would think that's a good possibility too. I have to say, ever since Edler came back from injury, he's had a really steady season. Probably one of his best ones in years.
Yeah. Now, let's just go through the cons, because it has been a talking point. Tyler already brought up the draft point. Are you concerned about not having a lottery pick with the Benning Weisbrod regime? Does it hurt in a long way?
It has the potential to. They've been pretty good at finding value wherever they're drafting. But there's some top-end players that could really help the Canucks rebuild in this draft. You've got, even if they don't get Jack Hughes, if the Capo Caco could be a fantastic winger for Bo Horvat. Bo Byram with the Vancouver Giants, it looks like he could be a very good addition to the blue line. Even though he is another left shot guy, he looks like he could be a minute munching defenseman that Quinn Hughes, for as good as he looks like he could be, probably won't be that. So Fair. there's too many good young players that could really help the now and future in this draft that you can say no, it won't hurt the Canucks, but there's still value to be found regardless of where the Canucks end up drafting. And who knows, maybe this is the year that after 3 years in a row, the Canucks just missing out on a top lottery pick, that they get lucky and just miss the playoffs and win it. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the whole lottery concept comes down to having the luck on your side that day with the 4 balls coming out of the machine. It really does come down to that.
Yeah, the Canucks could still trade up. They have the resources. I think that it wouldn't surprise me if they made a move. You could make a move up. I could see it. They have a couple of young guys that are a couple of players on this team that I think would be interesting to some other teams out there. I'm looking at their schedule. January is not terrible because they got the 6 game. They got Ottawa, Montreal, Toronto, Arizona, Florida, Edmonton, Buffalo, Detroit, and Carolina, and then the long break. So there's about, I would say, at least 5 winnable games there. The question for me will be February, because that's when it gets tough. You got Colorado, you've got Washington on the road, Calgary, San Jose at home, Anaheim, who I think is going to. I'm actually still scared of the Ducks. If any team in the Pacific Division worries me, it's the Ducks, because they just know how to win. You got the Sharks. You've got a couple of games against Colorado. I think we'll see what happens in February, where this team will be. In comparison to everybody else, though, in terms of what they're facing with the 5 teams, Anaheim, Dallas. I'm scared of Anaheim, but yet Dallas, Vancouver, Edmonton, Minnesota, size up their chance. What legitimately is their chances of making the playoffs?
Well, Minnesota isn't going to be an interesting team to watch now that they lost their top defenseman in Matt Dumba for basically the whole season. He's now done, and they've struggled to get any sort of traction in the right direction. Anaheim's looked a little bit better, but they're now on to 3rd or 4th string goalies for the next little bit. So that's not the best. And Edmonton is Edmonton. They can't seem to figure out how to win with the best player in the world in Connor McDavid. So it's tough. I think San Jose and Flames are gonna run away with with the top two spots in the division, and then the rest is wide open for the rest of the division. Honestly, I think I think you could make an argument for any of those teams.
I think the Canucks' chances are generally just limited by the fact that there's so many teams in the mix. You need a whole lot of things to go right. They need to avoid injuries. I think Kevin, you talked about the schedule. I think that they've got a lot of the difficult part out of the way, but there's still all those other factors there, and a lot of teams in the mix, and a lot of teams with more experience at this.
Yeah, and. Yeah, it is going to be interesting. I mean, and I think there's a lot of other controversies and stuff that may motivate or demotivate teams going forward. But the other factor about this is Elias Pettersson. And we have, in terms of what we can talk about this guy, in terms of his greatness right now, it's been off the charts, comparable to some of the best rookie seasons we have seen of all time. Comparable rookie seasons to a certain guy named Connor McDavid, the best player in the world, apparently, in Edmonton. First of all, I want to ask this question, because I think we need to get this out of the way, because there has been some comparison to Pettersson to McDavid. Is it a fair comparison?
In terms of being able to control the game, I think it is, because they, in very different ways, they can both take over games. My biggest thought process I've had the last couple of months is that as good as McDavid is, and what separates him from everyone else is his skating. Everything, like if you were to compare Crosby and McDavid, Crosby is overall a better player, overall a smarter player, but McDavid's skating makes him more impactful in today's NHL. Pettersson is a little bit more along the lines of the Crosby mold. He's so smart with the puck. Like what makes him special is not necessarily his electrifying speed. It's more what he does when he has the puck and how he makes the players on his line better. Well, McDavid, I think, as good as he is, doesn't quite have that, but he has the game-breaking speed and skill to take over a game just individually.
I think I would agree totally with McDavid. It's about the speed, and that's what really captures people's attention with him, especially if they see him play in person. I haven't been able to see him play in person, but when you hear other people talk about that, that's what really just wows you, is what he can do at speed. But but there's all these other things too, right? Right now, Pettersson's defensive play certainly impresses the heck out of me.
And I would argue,
David, we don't even talk about it, really.
Yeah, I would argue he's more willing to do that, it seems, than McDavid at this point in time. I'm not sure if we're allowed to criticize McDavid at this point, God bless his soul, but like, I don't. I think that was. I would argue that was one of the reasons they brought in Hitchcock, is because to bring in some sort of defensive ability or defensive desire for McDavid to play, because he doesn't seem to want to do that, and that doesn't seem to frighten Pettersson in any way, shape, or form. He's willing to go behind his blue line.
Yeah, I think Connor's, and this goes back to the talk about learning how to win, learning how to do the little things to make a difference in the tight games. The Oilers as a team haven't really learned how to do that. They've relied on, when they've won and had success, it's been based purely on their skill. And and skill can take you only so far. You have to learn how to win, how to do the little things. that make a difference in those tight games, in those short, in a short playoff series, in a win and you're in, win and move on scenario. And that's something that Travis Green, I think, is doing a really good job in instilling in the players on the Canucks, is those details. And that's something that I think Pettersson comes into naturally, and not to mention his determination and willingness to basically do anything to make a play.
In the case of the Oilers, I think changing coaches to Ken Hitchcock, I think they're hoping for, a similar outcome as far as the attention to the little details. But the Oilers have changed coaches so many times over the last number of years. That's one of those I'll believe it when I see it type of things. I mean, are they really that committed to the little things? Over the last number of years with the Canucks, there's always been this, I guess you could say, complaining in the fan base about signing veterans, but the veterans get this stuff, and they set that example for the younger players. And even though you may be struggling to take a step forward in the standings, it's the old phrase, it's a process. They're not trying to shortcut the process of teaching the little details to the younger players.
And that's something that I think gets lost in the whole Goldobin debate too, is that despite Goldobin putting up points and producing at a very good clip this season, he still has a few bad habits with the puck. And there's a reason why Travis Green likes to move Levo onto that line when they're defending a lead. And it's because Goldobin, despite everything good he does and all the play driving that he brings to whatever line he's on, is still prone to making a bad pass with the puck, too risky of a play with the puck, a pass across middle of the ice, up above the dots, between the dots and the blue line, where what if it's slightly off and gets intercepted, the opposing team's going down on an odd man break. And I think that's the stuff that fans need to understand, is that's what Green is trying to instill in all these players, is knowing when to make the risky play, knowing when to make the safe play, knowing what safe play to make at the right time. And you're seeing the one player coming out on the other side of it looking immensely better is Jake Virtanen. Not only is he scoring, but he's making great defensive plays and creating offense because off of defensive plays. And that's something that once Goldobin figures out, he's going to become an immensely better player than he already is.
Yeah, we've talked in the past on this podcast about Virtanen's improved play, and one of the things is he's in the right spot more often, and if they can get that figured out with Goldobin, he can be a pretty dynamite forward.
And you're seeing even, to get to the veterans here, and all the controversy over the offseason about why they signed Beagle and Roussel. Roussel has been I think he's been a very valuable asset to the Canucks, because you can move him on at least the second and third lines. You can play him with Horvat, or you can play him with someone else, and he is not going to hurt you. And I know offensively he hasn't been great, but I think Louis Eriksson has not been. I don't think Louis Eriksson has hurt the team at all this year with the way he's playing, and it allows Green, I think, to be flexible with the Levos and the Roussels, that you can move Goldobin. You can kind of play around here depending on the situation in the game, and I think that that's a huge advantage for the Canucks going forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think Roussel was that. Beagle for a fourth line player, that one can be debated a little more, although he comes with that Stanley Cup pedigree and that's credibility in the locker room. But the other thing is when he came back into the lineup, suddenly the Canucks started winning more games. The depth started to fit more. All the puzzle pieces were more in the right places than they were before. They weren't having to overwork Horvat and Gaudette. And And so, yeah, you are paying a premium to get a guy like a Beagle in there, but what a difference it makes just in terms of everything fitting into the right places.
Well, look at the penalty kill since Beagle came back. It's been one of the best in the league. Yeah. You've got Beagle, and then sliding Eriksson back into the penalty kill as well has really helped. And yeah, Eriksson hasn't produced much offensively and isn't anywhere near worth that $6 million cap hit, but he's still been a very good third line penalty kill winger for the Canucks since Beagle came back. And as Tyler was saying, the puzzle pieces are starting to fit in the right spot. And it's going to be interesting starting tonight as the Canucks get healthier to see what happens with Schaller being a healthy scratch more often than not now. Del Zotto being a healthy scratch more often than not now. What's going to happen because Berchi's coming back tonight. Sutter is close. Stetcher's coming back tonight. So I'm sitting here waiting for a announcement from the Canucks on what they're going to do roster wise, because they definitely need to make at least one move today. And whether that's waiving someone like a Del Zotto or a Schaller or even a Granlund, and then going with and keeping Gaudette up, or just sending Gaudette back down to Utica.
Yeah, I was kind of feeling like Granlund was the guy most at risk of losing his spot, but that was with both Sutter and Berchi coming back. If only one's coming back tonight, it's quite possible you see Gaudette get the demotion to the AHL, and but there's still one more move to be made for Sutter, and then Troy Stetcher, he's likely to draw back in, I think, tonight. So there's there are still some decisions to be made there. Granlund, to me, although versatile, he's not enough of a presence for me to keep a spot at this point. I mean, I think the organization is pretty happy with Gaudette's play and want to find a place for him. But the numbers may not work out.
I think Granlund is on his way out. Once everyone's healthy, you're going to see Sutter take over his penalty kill spot, and then what has he really done enough on the second power play unit to really warrant staying in the lineup? I don't think so.
No.
So, and with the Canucks showing willingness to sit Del Zotto and waive Gagne and send him to the Marlies in the AHL, I'm not exactly sold on the fact that they'll keep him just because he's got an NHL deal.
Yeah. It looks like, according to Canucks Twitter, it is expect Berchi and Stetcher good. I don't see a lineup yet, but Berchi and Stetcher appeared to be good to go. It is confirmed Markstrom starting tonight. So, but yeah, that's going to be interesting. But just to get back quickly to Pettersson here, what are we expecting in the second half? Because at some point I do wonder, like this is going to sound a little bit weird. I'm hoping for a little bit of a rut for him in the sense that I think it might actually be a benefit to him to go through a little bit of a slump and a little bit of a rut, because he'll have to at some point adjust his game a bit. But what do you think, Ian? Is it reasonable to expect the same pace? Is it going to be a bit of a rut, or teams going to start to catch up to him? What do you think?
I think I think you're going to see a similar pace. I think you'll see him drop off a little bit, but just with the talent that he's got to work with Besser, Goldobin, and whoever else they can have play with him. There's enough talent there to keep defensemen honest and keep them from overcommitting to him. So I think we're going to see a similar pace, but I think there will be a slight drop off just because I just don't see him maintaining the torrid pace on at least the late.
I mean, I think as with everybody, when there's more and more of a book on a guy, the strategizing against that player gets a little bit better. So, a little bit of a drop-off wouldn't be a surprise, but I'm not expecting a big drop-off with Pettersson. He's such a smart player. He has great vision. He's very crafty out there. And if things are getting a little bit stagnant, for whatever line he's on, the coach has some options there, as Sean was mentioning, to change it up and try and reignite the offense there from Pettersson. So not a big concern for me the rest of this season. It's of course that sophomore slump, the old sophomore slump thing for the second year, where I would be more concerned, but that's down the road.
Yeah. Just reading also Jeff Patterson tweeting, Barchi first player out for Canucks morning skate, another strong indication he's returning, which we've confirmed, got it out. The roster move is likely to be made this afternoon. So we'll see what happens this afternoon. Probably after the podcast.
I've got Brendan Batchelor tweeting out the lines from the skate this morning, and it's Horvat centering Eriksson and Virtanen, Goldie, Pettersson, Bester, Berchi on the line with Granlund and Levo, and then the Beagle, Roussel, Mott line as well. So the way I look at that is you've got Granlund basically holding a spot for Sutter, and then you've got you could have a potential and then you basically swap Horvat and Sutter in those two lines, and then you give Horvat, Berchi, and Levo on the wings to play more of an offensive role now once Sutter comes back, who can play more of the matchup role along with that Beagle line.
Yeah, I mean, looking at those lines there, Sean, it sure looks like Schaller's time might be over with the Canucks. It's kind of looking like that's going to be the move here this afternoon.
Schaller, or even just to hold on to him, because I don't know if I suspect he'd clear, but you never know. But Gaudette is the easy move, and send him down to Utica, get him a couple games at 16, 18 minutes per night, and then go from there.
Yeah. So
that would be the more conventional move, certainly.
Yeah, but I wouldn't be surprised if they move Schaller down, just because I think they want to give Gaudette as much time up in the NHL to learn, even in practice, going forwards.
Yeah. So let's kind of keep the Canucks here for a second, but let's transition a little bit. The Canucks did not have a lot of expectations this year. There were expectations of a lottery pick. They were not expected to be in a playoff battle that they are. We've spent the first 30 minutes or so talking a lot about what's happened. But a team that has not met the expectations, had to make a coaching change this year, and is fighting for a playoff spot, and lost 2 games. You can debate how well they played in the previous game or not, is the Edmonton Oilers, who I think it's, I'll be predict they're about to go on a 5-game losing streak because they're playing the Sharks this afternoon. I'm predicting and spoiling that I think that this is a game that I don't think that they'll win. But I'm starting to notice a little bit of something from the Oilers media, fan base, and much other things here. And it's around the guy that we can't seem to criticize, it seems, is Connor McDavid. It started back when the Oilers played the Flames in the middle of November, Todd McLellan's last game. McDavid gets into it with Backlund. Tkachuk gets in with Cassian. Cassian takes 962 minutes in penalties. The Oiler fan base is angry because McDavid got abused. Then Ken Hitchcock goes in the game before Christmas between the Oilers and the Canucks and says that it's basically talked about the penalties against McDavid and kind of whirled around a little bit. He's getting abused. And again, the first game after Christmas, 4 goals on 6 shots for the Canucks in the first period. They go on to win 4-2, and still the fan base is saying that the refs are not calling enough penalties on McDavid. So first of all, let's get that out of there. Do you believe that to be McDavid is getting I'm using air quotes here, abused more than anybody else? What are you seeing there? And second, is this a hiding of a conversation of something a bit bigger of a problem in Edmonton?
I don't think he's getting abused, or refs are ignoring more calls than they are against any other player, at least in terms of if you look just overall. It just is the fact that he has the puck more. He is the player that drives everything that makes Edmonton successful, so that whenever something does happen to him, it's in a microscope. And the Oilers fans are just it's a bit of a find something to blame other than the same old, it's the coach, it's the GM. They're trying to find something to blame for the Oilers not living up to expectations, and it's just the ref's turn now.
I mean, all good players get a ton of attention from the opposition. I mean, it just comes with the territory, and I think that's why you don't hear McDavid really ever comment on the reffing. I mean, he knows that. And a lot of the stuff that you see some cherry-picked highlights or whatever, and a lot of the stuff is marginal stuff. Sometimes it gets called, sometimes it doesn't get called. So, I think they're just reaching for material there. I don't think that McDavid is being abused per se. The other thing is, too, is he plays so much that you're going to see more of this.
He plays so much, and he's around the puck, driving the play more than anyone else. So yeah, you're going to see a lot more missed calls on McDavid than you are, say, a Ty Ratty or a Zach Kassian, because they're not necessarily going to be in and around the puck as much as Connor McDavid is.
Does he have to adjust his game a little bit, though? And the reason I say that is you look back at Crosby, because this happened to Crosby a bit, too, in his first years. He was getting stick-whacked. He was getting hit. He was there was a lot of abuse on him. And then he started to give it back a little bit, and he started to adjust his game. And you don't see Crosby... I mean, yes, of course, people are physical on Crosby, but he seems to have adjusted his game a bit. Does McDavid need to do that?
His stats say no. He's 36 games played this year, and he's got 19 goals and 54 points. He's still getting results. It's the Oilers and the rest of the team that need to figure out how to adjust their game to play better with him and without him. For me, it's not McDavid that's the issue, and because I don't even think it's slowing him down. He's still scoring at a ridiculous pace. It's the rest of the team that can't seem to keep up with him. Yeah,
and the only thing that could be said really is what I just mentioned. I mean, I think they're overplaying him a little bit, and that could be limiting his potential from being even better. But the rest of the lineup's so thin that any coach is going to ride this guy as long as he's producing.
Yeah, is there a way that he can adjust his game and still keep his stats? That he's almost protecting himself because he doesn't have a protector. He doesn't have Semenko. Lucic is no Semenko. No offense. Crosby had Ryan Reeves for a little bit, but he hasn't really had that kind of protector. And McDavid is not going to have that protector because that guy is now kind of obsolete in the game.
With the way the Oilers are currently constructed, I don't think there is much he can do. Because what more can you ask of him at this point? The only thing more you can ask for him is to become a Selke winner and basically carry the team to the playoffs. And as good as McDavid is, I don't think that's ever going to be his game.
No,
he needs to be focusing on being the game breaking offensive player. He shouldn't need to feel the need to become a Patrice Bergeron or a Jonathan Taves. They should be able to put a team around him that allows him to play to his strengths, and they haven't. The wings are slow. The whole team is slow. They can't keep up with them. So until the Oilers figure out that they need to actually get speed on his wings and speed throughout the lineup, they're not going to be able to. No matter what changes Connor makes, it's not going to be good enough.
Well, and the issue now is how do they fix it, because they're capped out. You know, they spent a lot of money on him. They spent a lot of money on Draisaitl, and they're overpaying pretty much everybody else. If not everybody else, most of the rest of the team is not really delivering at the in parallel with what they're being paid. So they got a real problem there. And I don't know, Kevin, did you get a sense of a little bit of panic maybe coming out of the Edmonton coverage of their loss to Vancouver? It's almost like, oh God, the one team we can't lose against is the Canucks, and that's two now in recent times.
This is the pro and the con of the Ken Hitchcock. I think he brings in a good spark. I think there'll be a lot of good things that he brings in. But is he a 2018 NHL head coach? And yes, he's got a Stanley Cup ring. He has some success, but he's also ran some teams into the ground. He is the current Mike Keenan right now in the NHL, which there can be good and bad. I don't think Hitchcock is a long-term solution. I think that they were hoping that the Oilers would be better than they are. I think in Oilers media land, I think that they're overvaluing. I agree with you, Tyler. I think they're overvaluing a lot of their players. I don't know if Mikko Koskinen is as good as they're making him out to be. He wasn't great a night ago, and Cam Talbot hasn't been the same the last couple of years since he got injured. I don't think he's been the same. Their defense continues to be a problem. And you're right, Sean, that the skaters are slow, and I don't think that any of their players have that true trade value. Like, even if you can mock Peter Chiarelli all you want, I mean, like, the guy's hands are actually tied because, yeah, okay, you could trade Lucic, but what are you really going to get from Milan Lucic now? Like, honestly, yeah, you overpaid for him. You kind of had to overpay for him, but you're not going to get anything for him back. Like, really, what is a tradable chip in Edmonton right now other than Ryan Nugent-Hopkins? And what would you really get for Ryan Nugent-Hopkins at this point?
A second pair of defensemen? 1-for-1?
Sure, but other than that?
I don't think they can go down that path again, can they?
No, I don't think so either. Honestly, I think as much as they don't want to hear it, yeah, Nugent-Hopkins or Draisaitl, one of those needs to go, because they're the only ones that have any sort of trade value at this point. Puljujarvi's his development stagnated. He hasn't looked great. Yamamoto's still, like, he's got value, but there's not that much. Not much that's going to be able to change the team.
Well, he has a chance today to make a difference. He got the recall there yesterday.
Yeah. Then on the blue line, Klefbom's injured. Russell's been injured. Sekera's injured. They really need. Darnell Nurse hasn't after looking like he was ready to take the next step, hasn't really done that this year. Going into the World Juniors, I would even say Bouchard's looked pretty pedestrian on the Canadian blue line in those two games so far. So I don't know. It's tough. They are in a tough spot where they have to figure out, and that's why they went with Hitchcock, is because they have to figure out how to get the most out of this team going. Because there's not much they can do other than making a gigantic move to move a Nugent-Hopkins or a Draisaitl to really shake things up.
Yeah, and it's. I mean, it's possible, but the other problem with Draisaitl is that contract. Is it something a lot of teams are going to take? I don't know.
Yeah, I think that would be an impediment for making a deal. That's a big number.
Yeah. Let's go to the World Juniors, and let's talk a little bit. Maybe let's quickly get into this because it was a debate. Canada beat Denmark 14-0, 2 touchdowns to 0. It caused a lot of stir into the fact of maybe there's too many teams in this tournament. Maybe we need to adjust some sort of rule when things like this happen. I mean, there are going to be blowouts in this tournament because there is basically two tiers, really. But although I think I would argue this year is probably more parity than anywhere else, anytime else. But you're going to have your Denmarks and your Kazakhstans. Would you recommend that we go back to 8 teams? Would you recommend that there needs to be some sort of mercy rule, or do we need to adjust anything, or is it just the reality of the tournament?
I think it's just the reality of the tournament. With it's an age tournament too, so the teams, they were talking about this during the game. The countries that get promoted up into the first division, a good chunk of the time, all their players that got them to the top division age out, and now you've got a bunch of younger players who who may not have the same skill level as the original group to compete with the bottom tier of the top division, because really you've got the top 4 or 5 in Sweden, Finland, Russia, Canada, and the States, and then you've got a couple others that can maybe throw a wrench into things and upset that top 5 at times. But the bottom 2 are going to be, for the most part, minnows. But I think having that spot for them is better long term for those countries' development of hockey players, because until you see that level of play, you're not going to be able to learn from it. So I think yes, you're going to have some 14-0 blowouts, but you're still it's still in the long run, you're looking at developing hockey as a whole, as opposed to just having whether or not the year-to-year results are quote-unquote fair.
This comes up every year, the number of teams. If you have it set at 8, then that means you've got and you're going to relegate one team each year out of the 8. That means you've got basically Switzerland and Slovakia duking it out every year to stay in there against your Germanys and Kazakhstans and Belarus and Latvia and all these other countries that we see occasionally. A mercy rule, that seems a little hokey to me, but if goals for and against is a crucial factor for tie-breaking in the seedings of the preliminary round, maybe you could say, for any one game, you only get a positive goal differential of 5 or something like that. You put a cap on it where if you put up the 14, that doesn't really benefit your team. I don't know what else they could really do. I mean, you have to give the weaker countries a chance to play against stronger competition if you're going to grow the game.
And we're looking at a team not in the top division this year, and is coming up next year, is Germany. They were the silver medal winners at the Olympics. Yeah, the NHLers weren't there, but still, there is still a little bit of parity between the top and the bottom. And Germany, I think people will be surprised at how good Germany is next year. From what if I remember correctly, they were saying that at least the majority of that team that qualified them to be promoted back up into the top division is coming back for next year. So
I heard different. Oh, that's interesting, because I heard Okay.
I think they were talking about that, and they said that the majority of a good chunk, like 9 players or something, are coming back for next year for Germany. So it's tough to really take it as a year in, year out deal because of where each country is in their development cycle with their teams. Because if all their players that, as I said, and if all their players that got them to be promoted age out and graduate to out of the age bracket, then there's not much they can really do.
I think maybe the best example of why this tournament is working is almost weirdly Switzerland, because they have actually not only developed that junior program to be, are they medal winners? No. Are they going to give people a fight? Yes. But even professionally, they're starting to give teams a bit of a fight now. So I guess the way that this is doing it, this is a benefit. I hate 14-0, but I also hate 56-3 in college football. So I just hate that I wish that there was a way to fix it, but I don't know if there realistically is a way to do it. And you can't blame the good teams. Like, you can't have them stop scoring. Like, it's just, that's not a benefit for them either. And Tim Hunter was very clear about that he didn't want the team to stop. And it wasn't, I don't think that that's poor sportsmanship so much as, like, this tournament is, when it gets into its intense points, which starts tonight against the Czechs, and then the Russians, and then the playoffs, another round, you've got to be ready, right? So, it's tough, but I don't know if there's ever going to be a solution.
No, and like I said, you got to look at it as a way to develop hockey as a whole. And Kevin, you brought up Switzerland, and that's a fantastic example of a team that and a country that just continues to develop and become and slowly move up into contention as a top 5 or 6 team in the country in the world for hockey.
Yeah. So let's look kind of prospect-wise here, kind of some of the big Canuck names in this tournament, some of the other big names. I don't know if a prospect with more pressure on them right now than Michael DiPietro. Am I off on that? I mean, the guy gets a shutout, makes 12 saves. Tim Hunter did name him the number 1 goalie going forward. But that seems to be, there's a perception, it seems like it better be him or else. Is this guy facing a lot of pressure?
Well, I think part of the reason there's that it better be DiPietro or else is because it's in Vancouver. You've got a Vancouver Canucks prospect playing for Team Canada, and who's basically he's also sort of been the de facto number 1 since the World Championships last year. He got cut from World Juniors last year, and then they named him to be the number 3 goalie in the World Championships in the spring, just to give him more practice with NHL shooters. So once that happened, everyone sort of put he's the de facto number 1 goalie for the World Juniors in Vancouver next year. So I think everyone, that the expectation is and is that he is the number 1 goalie. He is the starter. And he's the type of guy who can embrace that pressure, though. From what I've gathered from his interviews and everything that he did, like all the little bits they do on him, he has the mindset that can handle that. And so I have no issues with how they've handled it and how he's handled it, and I expect him to be as good as he can be.
Will there be an expectation if they win the gold and he stands out? Will there be in Canuck land? Are we going to see him be pressure to bring this guy up a little sooner than he's ready to, or do we need to hold it yet?
No, I don't think that either.
Yeah, I think there's going to be maybe a little bit from some non-educated parts of the fan base, but anyone who knows how goalies develop knows that there's going to be at least one season in the AHL for him to learn the pro game, and then at least one in the NHL to figure out the steps there. Right now, the biggest question is when are they going to give Demko the opportunity to take that next step and play a significant amount of games in the NHL to learn to take that next step. So, but DiPietro is at least 2-3 years away from pushing for NHL starts. But if he does stand out and play really well, that just gives the Canucks more depth in net going forwards.
Hey, Kevin, you bring up pressure. I mean, anytime you're wearing the Canadian uniform and you're a goalie, there's going to be pressure. The fact that it's in Vancouver, I don't think that really changes much for DiPietro. I think it's more just past history with goalies in this tournament for Canada. Times when Canada's fallen short of a gold medal, part of the issue has been the goaltending has gotten a little bit leaky. So, there's almost pressure on him just from past bad memories for fans, as opposed to any other factors.
Yeah, that's true, and I the goaltending position in Canada has been it's such an interesting thing, one way or the other, and I mean you even go back to 2010 in the Olympics. I mean, with Brodeur and Luongo, even like it's such a dynamic, polarizing thing, and it's been a benefit, and like a guy like Justin Pogge, it hurt a little bit. A guy like Carter Hart, he's up already with the Flyers, and clearly I don't think the guy's ready yet. I mean, so that's part of the problem. Is like sometimes it's like let's hope there's a cool your jets with DiPietro because he's nowhere. He's not ready for the NHL, and it's hard to expect It's hard to expect a 19, 20-year-old goaltender to be ready for National Hockey League shooting. It's just, in this day and age, it's almost impossible. It's better to go through that development part.
And the best thing for DiPietro right now is the fact that the Canucks have Demko.
Yeah.
Because he is the heir apparent to the net right now. It could be DiPietro in a year or two, but at this point it's Demko. And right now the biggest question for Canucks goaltending is how do you get Demko more starts in NHL this season so that going into next season when Nielsen is no longer under contract, you have and are you comfortable going with a Markstrom Demko duo next season when in all honesty that should be the season that you're looking to make an even more improvement on this season and become a legit playoff team.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, going back to the playoffs, is you want to be able to get value out of your top players' entry-level contracts. So right now, they're not going to get that with Brock Besser because this is his final year of his entry-level contract. But you have the potential to get 1 or 2 seasons out of Elias Pettersson's entry-level contract. How do you do that? And are the Canucks comfortable going into one of those seasons with a Markstrom-Demko duo? And how do you set that duo up for success with the blue line and the forwards in front of them?
Yeah, that is the question going forward, I think. Yeah, a big question.
And then going back to the World Juniors, you've got another high-level prospect with the Canucks in Quinn Hughes, who is likely going to be joining the Canucks at the end of this season or beginning of next season to add to the blue line. It's interesting. And before let's kind of talk about some of the other prospects. Quinn Hughes being the big one. What are your thoughts on him so far? He's far beyond the skill level of this tournament. His skating ability and the way he thinks the game alone, you can tell he's toying with a lot of the players in this that he's been put up against.
Yeah, that was no more evident than last night against Kazakhstan. I mean, he was just, it was almost like he was going for a noon hour skate out there a little bit. Like he's just, he's not afraid to hold on to the puck and go all over the offensive zone.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, and that's an element of the Canucks, are missing. And when you see that, it's very flashy looking. It certainly gets fans excited.
Yeah.
And then Tyler Madden is looking really good for the States as well. He's looking like another gem that Judd Brackett has pulled up in the mid to late rounds.
Yes. Do you know the United States has not lost a regulation tournament game in the World Juniors? It's like 43 games. They're on a 43-game winning streak.
Yeah.
That is insane. Like, they don't do well in the medal rounds. They seem to stumble a bit, but they win. They go on into these medal rounds pretty much undefeated. It's quite impressive.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier with why coaches hate those blowout games. It's so easy to get into bad habits.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing that the States have fallen victim to in this run is that during the pool play, they get into a few bad habits playing against the minnows, and then when the medal round ramps up, they make one or two too many mistakes, and that's that's the end of it. And then going full circle again back to what we were talking about with what will make what makes playing meaningful games up the stretch in terms of trying to make the playoffs good for the Canucks is, again, understanding that one or two mistakes may not show up too poorly on the stat sheet, but they can make or break a game, and you need to understand what to do to avoid them.
Yeah. And what about two more quick things? What are your thoughts on Jack Hughes?
He's looking like a top pick. He's also thinking the game at a level that is far beyond this competition.
Is this a U.S. tournament to lose?
No, I think there's the Russians are still pretty solid. Canada is still good. It's not. I don't think there's a quote unquote favorite in this tournament this year.
Yeah, I think there's 5 or 6 that could win it for sure.
I think the Finland's they've got, if they can get going, their top 3 lines are as good as anyone in this tournament. They've got Hovinen on one line, Kakko on another line, like 2 absolute snipers in this tournament. You've got the speed and depth of both Canada and the States. You can never count out Sweden or Russia. Like there's no, with so many players not coming to this tournament, it's just a little bit more wide open than normal.
Yeah. Before we get on to the next one, is Tim Hunter a future NHL coach?
I think so.
I think so as well. I think he's been putting in his time with Hockey Canada and in the junior ranks, and his time when he played in the NHL was obviously a very long time ago, but he's taken a lot out of his time with Pat Quinn, and obviously Pat Quinn is a well-regarded hockey person who's no longer with us. But you put all that together, I think there'd be an NHL team out there that would be interested in giving him a shot.
Yeah, I could see it too. There's probably a lot of teams that will be marketing him. So, we here in Vancouver have had a big debate about ownership over the offseason with the Aquilinis and Trevor Linden. If you're an Ottawa Senators fan, you certainly know about your owner and the disaster he's caused within the last year. But there hasn't been an owner that has been quoted as saying that their top players are playing like quote unquote H effing S, like Tom Gaglardi did for the Dallas Stars, as quoted on The Athletic, attacking, basically saying Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin are not getting the job done. So Jamie Benn's cap hit this year is over $9 million. Tyler Seguin's just signed an 8-year, $9.8 million contract this year. Is he offside, or is this? Let's look at Tyler. I wanted to pull up Tyler Seguin's stats before we do this, both of them, because they are not even in the top 50 in scoring. Jamie Benn has been a top 10 scorer for a long time, but they are not even in the top 50 at this point in time. Just pulling up their stats here. I had them up in the night, and we were looking at something else here. One quick second. So Tyler Seguin, 11 goals, 21 assists, 32 points. Ben, 15, 15, and 30. Defenseman Mark Giordano, by the way, has more points than both of them. 3 game-winning goals in combined between the two of them. They're hanging on by a third in the playoffs. Is he right? Is he wrong? What are your thoughts on what he's done here?
I think it's gone a little too far to the last side, but I don't think it's far from the truth in terms of they're 2 franchise level players and they aren't playing like it. So it's tough to really get sort of too upset with the message that he's trying to send. Just the way he sent it was definitely the wrong way.
Yeah, I don't think that the comments are inaccurate or unfair in terms of, what are we getting for these contracts, but this could have really long-term ramifications for the Stars franchise. When you have comments coming out in the public from the top like that, it starts raising all kinds of questions for me, anyways, about how much is ownership meddling with the team. Is ownership willing to let the hockey people run the hockey team? It's not uncommon to hear coaches call out star players. It's not even that uncommon, although less common than a coach, to get this from the general manager. But when you're going higher than that, if you're an unrestricted free agent this summer, that's going to make you nervous about any kind of sales pitch from Dallas, wouldn't it?
Yeah, there's definitely 2 teams that if I was a free agent that had my choice of teams, there'd be definitely 2 teams I would be avoiding, and Dallas is one of them.
Yeah, what's the other?
Carolina being the other.
Carolina? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm just looking at cap friendly here. I mean, yeah, Jamie Benn's the highest paid guy, and he's the captain, so it's obviously a concern for anybody if he's not performing very well, or it looks like he's not providing maximum effort. But I mean, there's still Jason Spezza there. There's still Alex Radulov. I haven't looked up their stats, but
Spezza has 5 goals this year.
That's just getting a pass. I know he's 35, but still, it seems like a bit random to be pointing the finger at Seguin, but I don't know. He basically was run out of Boston. I mean, there's still off ice problems, lack of focus, lack of commitment that are still dogging this guy. I don't know. The whole thing is very troubling that they couldn't keep that in house and try to get more out of those guys.
It really is tough though to keep things with so much media now. Even you go back to the Ottawa Senators and the Ubergate. It's really tough. It seems now, to keep a lot of stuff that we were expecting to be in-house to in-house anymore. Right? It's, I don't think the owner, to me, the owner was just texting his comments, and I'm sure that other owner would do the same thing, but, Lights put this to the media, and then this got the story, and, maybe this turns Seguin and Benn's season around, or maybe it turns them off. Who knows, right? But would you do you see Seguin and Benn? Do you see them trade bait?
I don't see those contracts as movable with the amount of term left on them. You know, I mean, a team would have to give up a lot to accommodate those guys.
Yeah, with the term left on both those deals, it's Seguin's new deal hasn't even kicked in yet.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and they both have no move clauses.
Yeah, and then once that kicks in, he's the highest paid guy.
That's right.
Seguin is a very talented guy. He is polarizing. He's a very talented guy, though, no question about it. But it's very interesting. Sorry, what were you going to say?
I think Benn would be someone that teams would take a chance on if he's willing to move. But I don't see either of them willing to move unless this is the beginning of the owners making it a little too toxic for them to stay. But then again,
this sounds a lot like the Ottawa situation.
Mm-hmm. And then you kind of look at it and go, okay, how is this? What are the long-term ramifications of doing that to one or two big star players?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting going forward. This is the end of the year. I kind of do want to just I think next podcast we'll maybe do a little bit more year in review. There's just a lot going on right now, I think, that we wanted to cover. I'm going to start with my news. To me, this is the news in the sport. There was a lot that happened. I think the Washington Capitals winning the Cup, finally. Ovechkin's celebration across the world with the Stanley Cup. I still believe he's hugging it in his bed right now before he gets into every game. I think it was a story. The Tom Wilson controversy, the LeBreton France flats and Erik Karlsson mess in Ottawa was a story. But to me, I think the biggest hockey story overall is the Humboldt Broncos. Just the whole tragedy around that. I'll never forget Jim Houston saying in the Toronto game, they say you could take some refuge in this game. Let's see, let's try. Even in Vancouver, there was the Sedin's retirement and Trevor Linden leaving. But to me, I think the biggest hockey story overall this year was the Humboldt Broncos and what happened there, the response of the nation and really across the world, and kind of their ability to come back. Nathan Ostrick stepped down yesterday as coach and GM. There's a lot to deal with still in Humboldt. But to me, that was kind of I came to the conclusion my biggest story of 2018 for the hockey world. I don't know what you guys' thoughts are, but
and there's even some more parts to that now for the Humboldt Broncos as Nathan Ostrick, their coach, just stepped down as of yesterday. So that's it is the biggest story, and it's just hope that these kids can come out better on the other end.
Yeah, it has to be the most impactful story of the year for sure. I mean, it's a tragedy like that is just the worst nightmare that any hockey parent could have when they send their child off to go play hockey elsewhere on a junior team or whatever, and for that to happen, and then to see how the hockey community across the world rallied around that team, and you had TSN there broadcasting the very first game, and the whole thing. I mean, it was that's been if not friend of mine, pretty close to the friend of mine for hockey watchers throughout the year. So I would agree with you, Kevin. That's the biggest hockey story of the year.
Yeah, and it's just I can't even imagine how tough it's been for them over this holiday season too. With that, but we'll keep following. Yeah, and even the type of people that were lost, I think just even learning about the human beings that were lost, I think just was just a sad thing all around, and the community rallying around it. Yeah. maybe we'll talk. Maybe we'll get into more We'll do maybe year predictions next year because I think there's a lot to kind of expect. But we'll leave it here unless there's anything else you guys want to kind of chat about quickly that we missed.
No, I'll just say tonight's a big game for the Canucks. They're playing a strong team in Calgary. It's a road game. The Flames are good at home. The Flames have been impressing the heck out of me throughout this season. So big test for the Canucks tonight. If they can get a W here, I'd certainly will raise some eyebrows, I think, around the hockey world.
Yeah, I think tonight's going to be a fun game to watch. I expect Roussel to be in the mix and making it a heated game too. So that'll add some spice and some fun to tonight. And then battle the Eliases.
Yes.
Too.
Yes.
Whose Elias is better?
Well, and just from the Flames' perspective, Peters called the team stale. So I do think that there's going to be some jump from the Flames. And I think we are starting to see, slowly but surely, David Rittich become the number one guy in Calgary. Now, is this sustainable? Is this the guy? I think that there's a lot to wait on that. I'm still on wait and see. I still think you need two goalies to go on a good run. If that second goalie is Mike Smith or not, I think is a fair debate. But you still need two goalies to have a good run. The two Eliases are probably two of the better players in this game. But I do want to say I think right now in my opinion, the Norris Trophy winner is Giordano, and I don't think that I don't think there's much of a debate about that. This guy has been rock solid at mid-30s. He's been fantastic. I just have to give that a shout out. But I think tonight's a big game for both teams for sure. The Flames want to stay ahead of San Jose as long as they possibly can, especially with that New Year's Eve game coming up. So we'll see about that. But thanks, guys. Again, where can we follow you? Did we lose you?
Oh, I'm here at T Noble, TNOBLE.
Okay.
And you can follow me on Twitter at BeardyConnect03.
All right, and at me at KVOLE. We will talk to you all very soon. Bye for now.